Now, not so long ago, we had the Heene boys with the balloon hoax out in Colorado. Now, in New Mexico, we have Bobby Bradley, and he's for real. He experienced it since he was 4. He had began to demonstrate and has attained the mastery of the balloons and so on. And they're going to have a control thing in which he has a certain amount of fuel that will allow him to be up for a certain time. He will go over 1,000 feet and so on. And then some experts are considering like what is too early and a whole 9 yards. And they're talking about the various, and if he succeeds, then he'd be the youngest, ever and so on. And of course, the National Transportation Administration has a certain age limit for a certain type of balloon, but his is different, and so maybe there's not a rule to cover that, and therefore he's going to attempt it. And the question is whether parents have their little agenda, or whether it's the kid basically interested and so on. And as a teacher, I think that a lot of it has to do with expectation, and the parents little by little encouraging him in various small tasks. And now he thinks that, or some way they're getting things through to him, and he's feeling like, oh, he can handle this. But if you remember, the youngest person that flew across America, she ended up being a social worker, I think, and she shot herself. It's like sometimes when they achieve so much when they're young and they're immature, and some way they think that they're special and the whole 9 yards, so that their development is sort of hamstrung. Their peers, and of course they're the youngest person who's done it, so there's nobody else, and they don't have anybody that they could relate to and talk about this stuff and so forth. And there's a problem. They talk about the movie stars and all this stuff. I mean, look, let these young people play around and have, play marbles and all this. I don't see what's the point. I mean, we could push it, get have a baby doing it, okay? But some way, somehow, we need to give these kids their lives and let them, live it, because we would push them, and then later on, when they have these personal problems, we're not there to support them. In my first year in psychology, or my first year in college, in my psychology class, we learned about maturity and so forth. And maturity has to do with a lot of activities that people engage in. And the experiment was that we had some chicken, not we, but this is the experiment, chicken, and there were, say, 8 of them or 12 that were hatched from same hen and cock eggs. And after being hatched, they took them out. Okay, they had them in darkness, and they fed them, differently by hand and so forth. What they wanted to try out and test is how accurate they will be, and whether maturity has something to do with the accuracy in pecking at various objects to eat. And so on the first day, they put one out and it tried to pick a corn, and it missed about 12 or 15 times. The next day, another one missed less. And the longer they went, it's missing less, until it becomes a point where it isn't improving. So what this experiment proves is that if you try to put one of these chicken out early to start pecking, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to peck better as a grown hen or cock or whatever. It shows that the later they are, the more developed they are, the eyes and the muscle coordination, they miss less, and this whole 9 yards. So even with students that study, you look at Sesame Street before they go to school. I mean, we're not discussing right now how they become stupid and the whole comical expectation, how they end up, becoming weird as they grow up. But we're talking here about real success. And so when they go to school, they are at an advantage. They know the numbers, they know the alphabet, they know a whole bunch of words and so on. But in reality of the show, and how it's different from the real classroom situation, what happens is that later in life, or maybe next year or the following year, students who weren't exposed to Sesame Street will catch up with them. So that, yes, they had an advantage for the first year or two, but then a kind of diligent student will catch up with them earlier and excel and go on and end up being more successful than them, because the Sesame Street has not prepared them for the reality. And they end up expecting, entertainment and some little coffee and drink while they're studying and all this stuff. And the student who hadn't watched the Sesame Street will end up being a much more rigorous and a much more stronger student. And perhaps the Sesame Street students are going to get burned out earlier. Maybe they won't even go to graduate school or go to college, but the others may go on. So with this guy here, I think that the parents are pushing him, and I don't think it's necessarily going to be in his long-term interest. So to accomplish this feat, but it's done already. He's going to accomplish it, but I'm not going to waste time to plot his future and all that. I'm not going to waste time with that. I know that he's not going to have a normal and exciting and rewarding life like his other peers who, wait if they're going to try that when they're mature and older enough.